Australia is the driest inhabited continent and is getting even drier. Last year, some parts of the agricultural food bowl within the Great Artesian Basin received their lowest annual rainfall on record. The population continues to grow between 1 to 2% each year, and all of these people will require access to fresh water. Unfortunately, surface water reserves are becoming increasingly stretched. With longer droughts and a higher frequency for extreme weather events that cause bushfires, which may in turn contaminate some surface water reservoirs, we must turn to groundwater to supply our future water demands. As of 2013, groundwater has been extensively tapped in Western Australia and the Northern Territory. However, the rest of Australia barely touches our groundwater resources, despite much of the agricultural sector being located along the eastern third of Australia. Part of the reason for this is that much of the groundwater dynamics is relatively unknown. So before we extract groundwater, we need to answer some important questions such as: how does geological stratigraphy affect local to regional flow patterns from recharge to discharge zones? What are the timescales of groundwater flow through major aquifer networks? Where is the water table and what is the hydraulic pressure in confined aquifers? And to what extent does saltwater intrusion affect coastal aquifers? Understanding these factors can help us better manage Australia's groundwater resources and help to inform government bodies tasked with managing these resources. With that background in mind, we have assembled a coupled groundwater thermal model of the Sydney-Gunnedah-Bowen Basin, which is located along the eastern third of Australia. This is a region important for agricultural production and home to some of the largest urban settings in Australia, encompassing Sydney, Canberra, Newcastle and Brisbane. We have assembled a 3D geological model of the entire region, which includes major sedimentary layers, which act as aquifers, and coal seams and volcanics, which behave as aquatards. This whole workflow was constructed using Underworld 2, a particle and cell finite element framework for geodynamics, which is supported by AuScope through the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. All models and data adhere to FAIR standards and are freely available on GitHub. To constrain our model, we assimilate multiple data types within a Bayesian framework, including chloride concentration, hydraulic pressure head, and temperature gradients. The chloride concentration is often used as a proxy for groundwater recharge. Because chloride is excluded from evapotranspiration, it leaches downwards into the water table. We get these chloride point measurements from Crosby et al. In 2018, which focused mainly on the Sydney Basin. Next is hydraulic pressure. Here is a 2D Underworld model demonstrating how the pressure head measured in a borehole can be used to find approximate values of hydraulic diffusivity within subsurface layers. In the first instance, we can decrease the diffusivity of the top layer in relation to the second layer. It results in a greater flow velocity in layer 2 and increased pressure at our point of observation. We have many of these observations within the Sydney-Gunnedah-Bowen Basin, which when combined with chloride concentration estimates, can very accurately constrain the values of hydraulic conductivities that we assign to each layer in the basin. Next, we have temperature gradients measured in boreholes. Temperature anomalies will be dispersed by groundwater flow from recharge to discharge zones. In the case where you have coal seams very close to the surface, like in the Sydney-Gunnedah-Bowen Basin, the low thermal conductivity of these coal seams results in very high temperature gradients towards the surface. This temperature anomaly is drawn away by groundwater flow to zones of discharge, effectively reducing the temperature gradients observed within temperature bores. This also helps to explain the high degree of scatter in temperature gradients observed within the basin. Assimilating these three datasets produces a constrained 3D groundwater model of the Sydney-Gunnedah-Bowen Basin. A key feature of this is the high rates of discharge of the continental shelf, up to 3 meters per day, and the strong influence of coal seams on the hydrothermal regime. We also looked at the residence times of inland aquifers compared to coastal aquifers. The time it takes for a droplet of water to travel from recharge to discharge zones is on the order of 383,000 years for inland aquifers, compared to just 182 years for coastal aquifers. This means that coastal aquifers can be replenished much faster than inland aquifers. Using more recent water levels measured in boreholes from 2000 to 2020, we find that the groundwater flow pathways have significantly changed. As water has been extracted from the alluvial sediments within the inland regions, groundwater has been scavenged from aquifers 1 to 2 kilometres deep to recharge the alluvial aquifer. Flow pathways have significantly lengthened as groundwater is drawn further away from recharge zones in a drying climate. Our results illustrate that progressively increasing water extraction from inland aquifers may permanently alter the long-range flow pathways. Our open source modelling approach can be extended to any basin and help to inform policies on the sustainable management of groundwater. As a result of this work, we have started a collaboration with Geoscience Australia to expand our modelling approach to encompass the entire Great Artesian Basin. This is an excellent opportunity to expand our modelling capabilities and to apply AuScope supported software to new applications. The typical timescales of underworld models are on the order of hundreds to tens of millions of years, but we show how the same flexible software framework can scale down to hundreds of years in order to solve groundwater flow problems. In the future, we hope to expand our framework to include ambient noise tomography constraints on flow timescales within the basin, and explore transient groundwater dynamics in response to changing recharge conditions and groundwater extraction from various aquifers. This will have long-lasting implications on the continued sustainable groundwater management of one of Australia's most precious resources. I would like to thank the Underworld development team for their relentless pursuit of software excellence and AuScope for their continued support through the simulation and modelling node. I would also like to acknowledge NCI Australia for providing computing resources. This work would not be possible without the support from my colleagues and co-authors, including Louis Morazi, Dietmar Müller, Craig O'Neill, Adam Beale, Willem Vervoort, Megan Miller, and Chengjin Jiang. Thank you.